You ever have that feeling where something is just off? You feel confused, you're constantly second-guessing yourself, but you can't for the life of you figure out why. It's this really dizzying feeling, almost like you're trying to walk through a maze, but the walls keep moving. One day, everything is fantastic. The next, you're met with this wall of coldness or criticism, and you're left scrambling, trying to figure out what rule you broke. You're always on shaky ground, just trying to get your footing in a dynamic that never seems to make sense.
Well, here's the thing. That feeling of being lost, it's usually not an accident. More often than not, it's the result of a very specific and very repeatable pattern of behaviors. It's like a hidden script or a playbook designed to keep you feeling exactly that way, off balance.
And that's what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to pull back the curtain on that playbook. Because once you recognize these behaviors aren't just weird quirks, but actual tactics, you can start to demystify the whole thing and honestly reclaim your own sense of reality.
So let's break down 5 of the most common and most powerful tactics from this playbook. Just seeing them laid out like this can be a total game changer because it's the first step to spotting them when they happen.
First up, we have something called intermittent reinforcement. This is that classic hot and cold treatment. One minute someone is showering you with praise and affection, and then bam, out of nowhere, it's gone. They turn distant, critical, just cold. You truly never know which version of them you're going to get.
And this quote right here, it just nails the trap. It's that unpredictability that makes the affection so addictive. It's the exact same psychological hook that makes slot machines work. You keep pulling the lever, totally convinced that the next one will be the big payout. And that hope, that possibility, is what keeps you chained to the machine.
Next on the list, moving the goalposts. This is when someone sets a target for you, but the second you get close to hitting it, the target suddenly moves. You do exactly what they asked for, only to be told, well, that's not quite enough, or actually, I wanted something totally different. And this shows the difference perfectly. In a healthy situation, the rules are clear. You know what's expected. But with this tactic, the target is designed to be unreachable. See, the goal isn't for you to win. The goal is to keep you running, to keep you trying until your confidence is so worn down that you start to believe you're the problem.
All right, let's talk about a tactic that really plays on our hopes. Future faking. This is when someone paints this incredibly vivid, detailed picture of a future with you. They'll talk about the trips you'll take, the house you'll build, all the dreams you're going to share. It feels so real, like a solid promise.
But here's the crucial part. These aren't real plans. They're tools. Tools for control in the here and now. By getting you so emotionally invested in a future that's never going to arrive, they can get you to put up with all sorts of terrible behavior today. It keeps you right where they want you.
Okay, this next one is so common. Weaponized incompetence. You know this one. It's when someone acts like they're just completely incapable of doing a task. They mess it up so badly, so consistently, that you finally just give up in frustration and do it yourself.
And this lays out exactly how they train you. First, they try to help, and they fail. Miserably. Then you realize that redoing their terrible work is actually more exhausting than just doing it right the first time. So what happens? You give up. You stop asking. And voila, they've successfully dodged all responsibility for that task forever.
And finally, we have a real mind twister. Victim reversal. This is a crazy-making move where you try to talk about a real hurt, something they did to you, and somehow, by the end of it, they're the one who's the victim. Your pain has somehow become their persecution.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? You walk into a conversation needing an apology, and you walk out of it giving one. They use your own empathy as a weapon against you, flipping the script so completely that your original point is totally lost. You learn that speaking up about your pain is selfish because it hurts them.
So, we've looked at 5 very different tactics, right? Unpredictable rewards, impossible standards, fake promises, phony incompetence, and flipped blame. What on earth do these all have in common?
Even though they can look so different in practice, they are all arrows pointing in the exact same direction. They're all different plays from the same playbook.
And that playbook is about one thing and one thing only: control. That's it. The number one goal of every single one of these tactics is to establish and maintain control over your emotions, your actions, and ultimately your reality.
And the effects of being under that kind of control are absolutely devastating. It's designed to make you doubt your own mind. It chips away at your confidence, twists your sense of what's real, and creates a dependency that feels impossible to escape. It silences you.
So, what do you do with all this? Now that you can see the moves in the playbook, what's next? Well, it all starts with a really simple but really powerful shift in your focus.
Look, the point of all this isn't to go around diagnosing other people. The real power here is to use this knowledge as a tool for yourself. It's about giving yourself permission to finally trust that gut feeling that has been telling you something is wrong, even when you couldn't put a name to it.
This right here gets to the absolute heart of it. The long-term damage of manipulation is that it makes you feel like your own reality is up for debate. But recognizing the playbook helps you see that your reality was never the problem. The problem was the person trying to rewrite it for you.
So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. Knowing all this is a huge first step, but the real journey is about taking your own story back. Now that you can see the script, how will you choose to trust your own?
All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on something that so many of us have felt, but maybe couldn't quite put a name to: manipulation. We're going to lay out the manipulator's unseen playbook, step by step, to turn that confusing gut feeling into some real, concrete clarity. You know that feeling, right? Where you're constantly off balance, or you're second-guessing a memory you were so sure about, or maybe you just feel totally drained after what should have been a simple conversation. If any of that rings a bell, it's because manipulation isn't just one thing. It's a whole system. It's designed to keep you guessing. And today, we're handing you the map. So here's our game plan. We're going to break down 3 major plays from this playbook. First, tactics that distort your reality. Second, the ones that control your behavior. And third, the ones that erode your self-worth. And then we'll wrap up with the single most powerful tool you have against all of it: awareness. Okay, first up, distorting reality. These are the moves designed to make you question your own mind, your own memory. They're all about attacking your perception of what's real, leaving you feeling like you're on shaky ground. That way, the manipulator gets to control the entire story. This is a big one. It's where they look you dead in the eye and deny something you know happened. They'll say, "That never happened," or "You're remembering it all wrong," with so much confidence that you actually start to doubt yourself. See, by rewriting the past, they get to control the present, leaving you with absolutely no solid ground to stand on. You know, this isn't always about telling a huge lie. It's sneakier. It's about giving you just enough information to make a decision that, surprise, surprise, benefits them. They conveniently forget to mention that one critical detail that would change everything. It creates this huge power imbalance, right? You're forced to make choices in a fog that they created, and they're the only ones who can see through it. Oh, this one is so powerful. They paint these gorgeous, detailed pictures of your future together. We're talking marriage, that dream trip, the business you're going to start. But here's the thing. These promises aren't actual plans. They're bait. They're designed to keep you emotionally hooked and compliant right now, while that beautiful future always seems to stay just around the corner. Have you ever asked a really simple question and gotten a 10-minute monologue filled with pointless details in response? Yeah, that's overjustification. The goal isn't to be clear. It's to exhaust you. They literally bury you in a tidal wave of information, weaving a story so complicated that it feels impossible to even challenge it. So you just give up. Not because you're convinced, but because you're completely overwhelmed. And this quote just absolutely nails it. It's not about being honest or transparent. It's a kind of informational warfare. It's meant to make you just drop the subject. It's a total smokescreen, not a window. All right, on to our second play, controlling behavior. So once your sense of reality is a little wobbly, the next step is to control what you do. These tactics are less about what's in your head and more about your actions, locking you into this endless cycle of trying to please them and win their approval. This might be one of the most powerful tactics of all. One day, they are just showering you with love, praise, and attention. The next, they are cold, distant, and you have no idea why. This randomness is incredibly addictive. Your brain gets hooked on the chance of getting that reward again, so you end up working harder and harder, just trying to get that good version of them to come back. And what's so fascinating here is how this slide breaks down the psychology. See, a consistent reward, that creates a feeling of security, but a random, unpredictable reward creates obsession and anxiety. It is the exact same principle that makes a slot machine in a casino so addictive. You just keep pulling that lever again and again, hoping for a payout that you know is possible, but you never know when it's coming. With this tactic, you can never win, because the finish line is always moving. You'll do exactly what they asked, only to be told, "Well, that's not good enough.
or that the rules have somehow changed. The point isn't for you to succeed. The point is to keep you perpetually trying and to make you feel like you are perpetually failing.
This little timeline shows the cycle just perfectly. It starts with the simple request, but as soon as you meet it, the criteria changes. Suddenly, it wasn't just about the task, it was about the quality of the task. And then it was about your attitude while doing the task. The target just keeps drifting, ensuring you never, ever feel like you got it right. It's designed to completely destroy your sense of competence.
You have to decide right now, or this amazing offer expires in 10 minutes. Sound familiar? This tactic creates a fake crisis to totally bypass your rational brain. It hijacks your fear of missing out, pushing you to make a fast, emotional decision before you have a single second to spot the red flags or really think it through.
And this brings us to our final play in the playbook, eroding self-worth. Honestly, these tactics might be the most damaging because they're aimed directly at your confidence, your self-esteem, and your core belief that you're a good, capable person.
This one is a masterclass in emotional jujitsu. You bring up something they did that genuinely hurt you, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one comforting them. They'll claim that by bringing it up, you've attacked them, that you're being cruel. They literally weaponize your own empathy against you to dodge any and all accountability.
And it follows this exact sequence almost every time. It's so predictable. Your valid concern gets twisted into an attack on them. Their big performance of being wounded forces you to switch roles. You go from being the hurt party to being their caretaker. And just like that, your needs, your feelings, completely erased.
Ah, the classic. I just don't know how, or I'm just really not good at that defense. They'll do a task so badly, whether it's laundry, dishes, paperwork, that you realize it's just easier to do it yourself. And over time, they literally train you to lower your expectations, leaving you buried in all the responsibility while they get to enjoy their freedom.
With this one, they'll do something nice, buy you a gift, maybe help you with a project, and then they use that single good deed as a license to be cruel or neglectful for weeks. If you dare to complain, they hit you with, "But what about that nice thing I did for you?" They're basically using kindness like a currency to buy your silence. So after seeing all of these pretty destructive patterns, you might be wondering, what's the solution? Well, the answer isn't what you might think. It isn't about confrontation. It's about awareness. The goal isn't to win an argument with a manipulator. Trust me, you probably won't. The goal is to win back your own mind. And this is absolutely the most critical point. Your power comes from simply seeing the game for what it is. The second you can silently say to yourself, "Ah, that's moving the goalposts," or, "Okay, here comes the victim reversal," that is the moment you step out of that confusing fog and back into clarity. So let's just boil this all down. First, when you can name these tactics, you start to disarm their power over you. Second, remember this isn't about winning an argument. It's about protecting your own peace of mind. The most important thing is that you begin to trust your own perception of reality again. And finally, look for the patterns, not just one-off incidents. So we'll leave you with this question to think about. Having this knowledge is the first huge step. Seeing the playbook isn't about blaming or starting a fight. It's about giving yourself the clarity you need to make different choices for yourself. So now that you can see the plays, what will you do differently? All right, let's talk about something that's, well, it's a game changer when you finally see it. We're talking about manipulation. And here's the thing. We're going to look at it not as just random, confusing stuff people do, but as a literal playbook with set plays. Ready? Let's get into it.
Have you ever walked away from a conversation just feeling weird, kind of off balance, and you can't for the life of you figure out why? It's like you're playing a game, but no one ever told you the rules. Yeah, that feeling. That's exactly what we're going to pull apart and understand today.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, what is this unseen playbook? Then, we'll get into the three main sections of plays. Play number 1 is all about distorting reality. Play 2 is about controlling behavior. And play 3? That one's about eroding self-worth. Finally, we'll wrap up with the one thing that changes everything: awareness.
Okay, so the big idea, the main takeaway right from the start is this. These manipulative moments, they aren't random. They're not just one-offs. They're part of a pattern, a system of tactics that get used over and over. And our goal here is to help you see that pattern so you can go from what just happened to, ah, I see what you're doing.
All right, let's jump into the first part of the playbook. And honestly, this one can be the most head-spinning.
These are the plays that mess with your reality. The whole point is to make you question your own mind, what you saw, what you heard, what you remember.
Okay, so imagine this. You remember something crystal clear, a promise they made, an argument you had. You bring it up and nothing. They look at you and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. That never happened. And they say it with such conviction, you actually start to think, wait, did I make that up? That's the goal, to make you doubt your own memory so they can control the narrative.
Now this one is so tricky because it's not technically a lie. It's about what they don't say. They'll give you just enough information to make you feel informed, but they'll conveniently leave out that one crucial piece of the puzzle, the one thing that would totally change your mind. And when you call them on it later, oh, well, you didn't ask me about that. It makes their omission your fault.
Oh man, this one is a classic. It's hiding a lie in a giant haystack of truth. You ask a simple why and you get a novel in response. A huge, overwhelming flood of details, timelines, names, stuff that has nothing to do with anything. They're not trying to explain, they're trying to exhaust you. They just drown you in so much information that you give up. This one is just wow. It's where they weaponize your own kindness. You go to them and say, hey, what you did really hurt me. And somehow, within seconds, they're the victim. Suddenly it's, I can't believe you'd accuse me of that after everything I do for you. And just like that, the tables have flipped. You end up comforting the very person who hurt you. So, you see how those first plays make you question yourself? Well, once you're on shaky ground, it's a lot easier to control what you do. And that brings us to playbook number 2, controlling behavior. This isn't about what you think anymore, it's about what you do. It's about keeping you stuck, keeping you hoping, and keeping you right where they want you. This is the one where they sell you a beautiful dream, a future that sounds absolutely perfect. They'll talk about us and we and all the amazing things you're going to do together. It feels so real. So you put up with things now because you're investing in that amazing future. The only problem, that future is a fantasy. It's a carrot on a stick, always just out of reach, designed to make you behave today. Okay, this one is pure psychology, and it's incredibly powerful. It's basically the slot machine effect. Why are slot machines so addictive? Because you never know when you're going to win. It's unpredictable. It's the same with affection in these dynamics. If they're sometimes amazing and sometimes awful, that's addictive. You get hooked on the highs, constantly pulling the lever, hoping for that next payout of kindness. Ever been in a situation where suddenly it's a 5-alarm fire? We have to decide right now or it's all over. That's false urgency. They create a fake crisis to put you under pressure. Why? Because when you're panicked, you don't think, you react. They're basically short-circuiting your rational brain to get you to agree to something you'd probably say no to if you had 5 minutes to think about.
Ah, weaponized incompetence. This is a classic. It goes like this. They agree to do something, but they do it terribly. So badly that you have to redo it anyway. So what happens next time? You just do it yourself to save the headache. And boom, they're off the hook forever. They've literally trained you to do the work by pretending to be bad at it.
All right, so we've talked about messing with your head and controlling your actions. This third and final playbook, this one's different. It's more personal. This is a direct attack on your self-worth. These are the tactics designed to make you feel small, to make you feel like you're just never good enough. This is the ultimate unwinnable game. You do exactly what they ask. Clean the kitchen. You do it. Then it's, well, you didn't do it this way. You apologize. Well, your apology didn't sound sincere. You can never, ever win, because the point isn't for you to win. The point is to make you feel like a constant failure, always chasing a target that keeps moving just as you get close. Think of this one like a really messed up permission slip. They'll do one nice thing, a really grand gesture maybe, and then they bank it. They treat it like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Later, when they do something awful and you call them on it, they'll say, how can you be upset after I did that one nice thing for you? It forces you into a corner, making you feel like you're the ungrateful one. Okay, that was a lot, I know. And hearing all this can feel a little heavy. But here's the really, really good news. The solution, the antidote to all of this, it's actually incredibly simple. It's just awareness. That's it. Once you can see the game and name the plays, you've already taken away most of its power. And let's be super clear about something. The goal here is not to become an armchair psychologist and go around diagnosing everyone you meet. No, this is about you. It's a shield, not a sword. It's about being able to trust your own gut. So when that feeling of something isn't right pops up, you can now say, no, I'm not crazy. I see what's happening here.
I think this quote just sums the whole thing up perfectly. The explanation isn't meant to clarify. It's meant to confuse you, to exhaust you, and, in the end, to silence you. And that's the whole game right there. But when you're aware, you can finally see through all that noise. So that's the playbook. And now that you can see it, now that you know the plays, what changes for you? What will you do differently? Because that's the real power. It's not just about knowing, it's about doing. It's about taking back your power, trusting yourself, and deciding which games you're willing to play. Thanks for digging into this with me.
All right, let's talk about something really important. Today, we're cracking open the Manipulator's Playbook. We're going to break down some of the most common and, frankly, most confusing tactics people use to keep you feeling off balance.
You know that feeling, right? That constant confusion where you feel like you're always one step behind and you're never quite sure what just happened or why? If that sounds familiar, I want you to know that's not an accident. It is absolutely by design.
Because you see, manipulation isn't usually random chaos. It actually follows a set of pretty predictable patterns, or plays. Think of it like an invisible playbook that's being used to control the game you didn't even know you were playing.
And the entire point of this whole thing is to be confusing. So our goal here is simple. We're going to give you the rule book. Because the very first step to dealing with these tactics is just to give them a name. When you can finally see the play for what it is, you're not playing in the dark anymore.
Okay, so first up, let's dive into the tactics that are all about distorting your reality. These are the plays designed to make you question everything you thought you knew, to literally rewrite your world. So, selective memory. This is when you bring up something that you know happened, like an argument you had or a promise they made, and they just look at you, maybe with this look of complete confusion, and say, I have no idea what you're talking about, that never happened. They rewrite history so convincingly that you actually start to doubt your own mind. It's a fast track to creating what's called cognitive dissonance, that really uncomfortable feeling of holding two completely conflicting beliefs at the same time, what you know happened and what they insist happened.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? You have your reality on one side, and their confident, completely contradictory story on the other. And when that happens over and over again, it starts to wear you down. It erodes your trust in your own perception, which is, of course, exactly the point.
Now this next one, information withholding, is so insidious because it isn't technically lying. It's all about controlling the story by just leaving out the crucial details. So you end up making decisions based on what you think is the full picture, but it's not. And then, way later, you realize you would have done something totally different if you just had all the facts.
Have you ever asked someone a simple question, and in return you get this 10-minute monologue that goes absolutely everywhere? That's overjustification. It's like they build a wall of words filled with irrelevant details, weird side stories, and super complex reasoning, all designed to just exhaust you until you give up. The goal isn't to clarify, it's to confuse you so much that you just drop it.
Oh, this one is so powerful because it hijacks your sense of hope. They paint these beautiful, vivid pictures of a future together. You know, the house you'll buy, the trip you'll take, the business you'll start, and it all feels so incredibly real. So you invest everything, your time, your energy, your emotions, into a dream that honestly was never going to happen. And really, it just boils down to this. Those promises are just tools. They're tools to keep you hooked, to keep you invested right now, while the amazing future they describe just never seems to arrive. And that leads us perfectly into our next category. Tactics that aren't just about confusing you, but are designed to actively control what you do, to pull the strings. This is that classic hot and cold behavior. One day they are showering you with love and attention, and the next they're distant, critical, and cold. That unpredictability creates this powerful, anxious craving inside you. It's actually a really potent thing, neurologically speaking. The unpredictable nature of the reward, their affection, triggers dopamine in your brain in a very similar way to a gambling addiction. It keeps you completely hooked. It's the perfect metaphor, really. It turns the relationship into a slot machine. You just keep pulling that lever, totally convinced that the next time, that's going to be the time you hit the jackpot. The possibility of that reward becomes way more addictive than consistent, reliable kindness ever could be. Okay, so with this tactic, you finally do the thing they asked for. You meet the standard, and just when you think you've succeeded, they tell you it wasn't enough. Or actually, they wanted something completely different all along. The target is always shifting, which makes it impossible to ever win. And what that does over time is it just systematically destroys your sense of your own competence. We have to decide right now. You hear that? That's false urgency.
This tactic basically manufactures a crisis to short-circuit your rational brain. It hijacks your fear of missing out or your fear of their reaction, and it forces you to commit to something before you've had any chance to think it through or spot the red flags.
All right, our final set of tactics are all about one thing and one thing only: avoiding responsibility. These are the plays used to make sure the manipulator is never, ever the one at fault.
This is when someone performs a task so badly and so consistently that eventually you just give up and do it for them. You have to understand, this isn't a genuine failure to do the task. No, it's a deliberate strategy. It's a performance designed to shift all the labor and responsibility right onto your shoulders by them just acting helpless.
And here's the long-term result of that. You just stop asking. You end up taking on all the work because it's just easier than dealing with their manufactured incompetence. And that's the goal. They've successfully trained you to expect absolutely nothing from them.
Okay, this one is a masterclass in what you might call emotional jujitsu. You bring up a legitimate hurt, something they did that upset you, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one apologizing to them. They weaponize your own empathy by performing such intense distress that you end up feeling guilty for even bringing the problem up in the first place.
And you can literally see the sequence play out. It starts with your issue, but then they perform this big emotional reaction, and suddenly the focus shifts entirely to their feelings. Your original point gets completely lost, and you're left comforting the person who hurt you. It's a predictable and, honestly, a devastatingly effective pattern.
This tactic works like a messed up moral bank account. They do something nice, maybe they bring you flowers or give you a compliment, and that's a deposit. Then, later, they feel like they have the right to make a withdrawal by being selfish or cruel. That one good deed becomes a shield they can hold up to deflect any criticism for all the bad stuff.
So, wow, we've just walked through 10 different plays from this invisible playbook. And look, the goal here isn't to make you paranoid. Not at all. It's to make you aware. Because just recognizing the pattern is the single most powerful first step you can take to changing the game. And if you take one thing away, let it be this: pay close attention to how these tactics make you feel. Future faking feels hopeful but also stuck. Victim reversal leaves you feeling confused and guilty. Those feelings, they are your compass. They are powerful clues that one of these plays might be in motion.
Because ultimately, this knowledge gives you options. It gives you power. You can choose not to play, you can choose to set a boundary, or to just walk away entirely. The real power is in finally seeing the game board clearly. So the question I want to leave you with is, what are you going to do with that clarity?
All right, today we are pulling back the curtain on some of the most common and, honestly, most confusing tactics of manipulation. The whole point here is to get some clarity, to take that chaotic feeling and give it a name, so you can start seeing the patterns for what they really are.
You know that feeling, right? Where you're constantly off balance in a conversation or a relationship? Like you're always one step behind, just reacting to moves you can't even see. Well, let me tell you, that's not an accident. That is the entire point.
See, what feels like random, confusing, and unpredictable behavior, it's usually anything but. There's a pattern to it. There's a predictable set of moves. You could even call it an invisible playbook.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. Manipulation absolutely thrives in confusion. So, the first and most powerful thing you can do is just name what's happening. So let's open up this rulebook, shall we? Okay, we're going to start with the tactics that are designed to mess with your perception of reality itself. I mean, these are the plays that are meant to make you question your own mind and your own memories. So first up, we have selective memory. This is when someone will just confidently deny something that you know happened. An argument, a promise they made, a really hurtful comment, poof. They'll insist it never happened, or they'll tell a completely different story where, surprise, they look great.
And here's the real trap. They present their version of things with so much conviction that you start to second-guess yourself. You start thinking, wow, maybe I am remembering it wrong. And over time, that tactic just chips away at the trust you have in your own perception of the world. Next up is information withholding. Now this one is tricky because it's not technically lying. It's way more subtle. They just leave out the crucial details. You know, the little pieces of information that, if you knew them, would completely change your decision. It's all about keeping you in a fog that they control. Oh, and then there's overjustification. This is where you ask a really simple question, and what you get back is a 10-minute monologue. It's so full of irrelevant details and weird side stories that by the end of it, you've completely forgotten what you even asked. The goal here isn't to clarify, it's to exhaust you into silence with a giant wall of words.
And to round out this section, we have future faking. This is when someone paints these beautiful, vivid pictures of a future with you. They talk about the trips you'll take, the life you'll build, the goals you'll achieve together, and it feels like so much hope, right? It keeps you invested and it makes you put up with really bad behavior right now for a future that sadly is never going to arrive.
And this is the real tragedy of it. Those promises, they aren't actual plans. They're just tools to keep you quiet and hopeful. You end up making real sacrifices for a dream that was, in the end, just talk.
All right, let's move on to the next set of tactics. These are all about directly controlling your actions and your emotions. These are the plays that are really designed to pull the strengths.
Now this one is incredibly powerful. It's called intermittent reinforcement. One day, they are just the warmest, most loving, attentive person you've ever met. The next day, they're cold, distant, and you can't get a word out of them. You never know which version you're going to get, and that unpredictability is what makes it so addictive. You're constantly trying to figure out how to get back to the good times.
It's really just like a slot machine. You just keep pulling that lever, hoping for that little payout of affection. And here's the crazy part. The fact that the reward is random is what creates the obsession. It keeps you hooked in a way that consistent kindness never, ever could.
Next, we have moving the goalposts. This is so frustrating. It's when you do exactly what they ask for, you meet the standards, and then you're told that's not what they wanted after all. The target is always shifting. The point isn't for you to succeed. The point is to keep you constantly trying and constantly feeling like you're just not good enough.
And then you have false urgency, that you have to decide right now kind of pressure. This tactic basically manufactures a crisis to hijack your brain's fear response. It's designed to completely bypass your rational thinking, pushing you to agree to something before you've had a second to actually think it through and spot the red flags.
Okay, our final set of tactics is really all about one thing: avoiding responsibility. These are the classic plays used to dodge the blame no matter what. First up, weaponized incompetence. Let's be clear. This isn't someone genuinely struggling with a task. No, this is someone deliberately doing a task poorly over and over and over again until you get so frustrated that you just give up and say, fine, I'll do it myself. It's a strategy, a very effective one, for shifting responsibility right onto your plate.
And that right there is the long-term result. Slowly but surely, you just start taking on more and more, because it's just easier than dealing with their supposed inability. You've literally been trained to lower your expectations of them all the way down to zero.
Victim reversal. This is a masterclass in emotional jujitsu. You bring up a legitimate hurt, something they actually did that upset you, and before you know it, they're the one who's hurt. They'll claim you attacked them, and somehow the conversation ends with you apologizing to them.
And the pattern is so predictable, you can almost set your watch to it. Your initial concern gets completely wiped off the map, and the whole conversation pivots until you're the one soothing their feelings. It's an incredibly effective way to shut down any attempt to hold them accountable.
And finally, there's moral licensing. This is where someone acts like doing one good thing gives them a free pass for a bunch of bad behavior later. They'll constantly bring up that one time they were helpful as a way to deflect any criticism for the 10 times they weren't. But here's the thing. Kindness doesn't work like a bank account you can just make withdrawals from.
So, okay, after walking through all of these different plays, what's the big picture here? Well, it's about recognizing that these aren't just isolated one-off incidents. They are tactics. They're moves in a game.
Let's really connect the dots between the tactic, the goal, and how it makes you feel. Take future faking. The goal is to keep you invested, and it leaves you feeling hopeful, but totally stuck. Or victim reversal. The goal is to evade accountability, and it leaves you feeling confused and guilty. When you see it all laid out like this, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. You see, by just giving these confusing behaviors a name, you take away so much of their power. You really can't unsee the playbook once you know it exists. So the real question isn't just about what they're doing anymore, it's about what you do next. Now that you can see the moves, what's your next one going to be?
You know, when we hear the word manipulation, we often picture some kind of evil genius, right? But what if it's not that complicated? What if it's really just a set of predictable tactics, almost like a playbook? Well, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to open up that playbook and take a look inside. Have you ever felt like that? I mean, really felt it. That gut-wrenching, exhausting feeling of walking on eggshells. You spend all your time second-guessing yourself, replaying every single conversation, just trying to figure out, what did I do wrong this time? It's so disorienting. And you know what? It's a lot more common than you might think. And that's why we need to get this straight, right from the start. If you feel lost in a situation like that, it is probably not your fault. In fact, that confusion, that feeling of being totally lost, that's often the goal. It's the intended result of these strategies. It's a playbook, like I said. And trust me, once you see the plays, the entire game starts to look different. All right, so let's do it. Let's pull back that curtain and look at some of the key tactics in this playbook. Just recognizing these patterns, well, that's the most powerful first step you can possibly take to get your sense of reality back. Okay, first up is a really big one. It's called intermittent reinforcement. You've probably felt this before. It's that classic hot and cold behavior. One day they're showering you with praise, affection, making you feel like the most important person in the world. And then, poof. The next day they're distant, cold, maybe even critical, and you have absolutely no idea why. And this is the twisted genius of it, psychologically speaking. Because that affection is so darn unpredictable, you get kind of obsessed with trying to get it back. That possibility of getting the reward, that hope, it actually becomes way more addictive than the affection itself ever was. So why does it work so well? Well, it literally taps into the same reward system in your brain as a slot machine. Seriously, you're just standing there, pulling the lever over and over again. You keep putting in coins, enduring all the losses because you're totally hooked on the chance of that next big payout. The whole relationship turns into a gamble for affection, and it is incredibly powerful at keeping you stuck. Okay, next up, let's talk about future faking. This one can feel so magical at first. It's when someone paints these amazing, detailed pictures of your future together. We're going to take that trip to Italy, we're going to move in together, we'll start that business, all these beautiful promises. But here's the catch. It's all designed to get them what they want from you right now. Yeah, that's the key right there. Those promises, they aren't plans. They're just tools. They're designed to keep you emotionally invested, to keep you hoping, and maybe most importantly, to make you put up with really bad behavior in the present, all for some imaginary payoff that's always just around the corner. And this is so powerful because our brains just eat it up. We hear these beautiful stories and we start to believe them. We begin to make real-life sacrifices for a future that only exists in words. You might pass on a great job opportunity or stick around in a terrible situation, all because you're banking on a someday that frankly was never going to happen. And then there's this one, moving the goalposts. You know this feeling. You work so hard to finally do the one thing they said would fix everything. You do it, you achieve it, and then you find out, nope, that wasn't it. Actually, there's a new rule, a new standard you didn't even know existed, and guess what? You've already failed it. And you can see how different this is from a healthy situation, right? In a healthy dynamic, expectations are clear, and the goal is for everyone to succeed together. But here, the target is designed to be unreachable. The whole point isn't for you to win. The point is to make sure you're always trying and always failing. And you can imagine what this does to your self-esteem over time. It's just devastating. When absolutely nothing you do is ever good enough, you start to internalize that. You believe it's you. You stop trusting your own competence, your own judgment, and you start to think, I must be the problem here. All right, now for one that is so frustratingly subtle, weaponized incompetence. This is basically a strategic performance of being totally useless. They'll agree to do something, sure, but then they do it so badly that it's just easier for you to sigh, give up, and do it yourself. And make no mistake, this is a training program. They are actively training you to stop asking. They teach you to lower your expectations so much that you just take on all the work yourself, because it's less exhausting than dealing with their fake helplessness. And for them, that's a huge win. Mission accomplished. And here's the dead giveaway. It's selective. Isn't it funny how they suddenly become perfectly competent and capable when it's something they want or that benefits them? That incompetence is just a switch they flip on and off to get out of doing things that would help you. Okay, our last tactic for today is maybe one of the most dizzying, mind-bending ones of all. Victim reversal. Here's the scene. You try to bring up something they did that genuinely hurt your feelings. And somehow, by the end of that conversation, they are the one who's been wronged. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? The conversation that started with your pain ends with you comforting them. You literally walk away from the conversation apologizing to the very person who hurt you in the first place. It's completely backwards. And what's so insidious about this one is that it works by weaponizing one of your best qualities, your empathy. Your natural instinct to care for someone who seems distressed is used against you. It becomes a get-out-of-jail-free card for them, a way to dodge all accountability. And in the process, your legitimate pain just gets completely erased. So, okay, we've looked at all these different plays from the playbook, right? The hot and cold stuff, the fake promises, the impossible standards. They all seem different, but they're not. They all have one single unifying goal. So what's the point of it all? What's the end game? It's one word: control. That's it. Every single one of these tactics at its core is about gaining and maintaining power. Power over your feelings, power over your choices, and ultimately power over your perception of reality. The whole goal is to keep you confused and off balance because that's how they stay in charge. So now that we know this, what do we do? Look, understanding this playbook isn't really about preparing for a fight or winning some kind of argument. It's about something way more important, way more fundamental than that. It's about taking back your own reality. And I want to be really clear about this. The point here is not to go around diagnosing everyone you know. The point is to arm you with the knowledge to validate your own feelings. It's so when that little voice inside you says, hey, something feels really wrong here, you have the tools to listen to it. This is about giving yourself permission to trust your own gut. So I'll just leave you with this thought. Now that you can see the playbook, now that you recognize the patterns, this isn't just some interesting psychological trivia. It's a map. It's a map that can lead you back to trusting yourself. So the real question is, how are you going to use that map to start trusting your own story? Hey everyone, today we are cracking open the manipulator's unseen playbook. We're going to break down all those confusing, isolating tactics they use and turn them into a clear, simple framework so you can finally see the game that's being played. Let's get into it. So, does this feel familiar? You're in a conversation, maybe a relationship, and you just constantly feel off balance, confused, like you're always a step behind. You might even start to question your own memory, your own sanity. Well, that feeling, that is a massive red flag that there's a hidden set of rules at play, a game you never even signed up for. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at the 3 core plays from this hidden playbook. First, how they distort your reality. Then, how they control your behavior. And finally, how they chip away at your self-worth. And then we'll wrap it all up with the most powerful tool you have against all of this: simple, clear-eyed awareness. Okay, let's kick things off with plane number 1, distorting reality. These are the tactics that are designed to go straight for the jugular, your own perception. Their whole purpose is to make you doubt what you see, what you hear, and what you remember. First up is selective memory. So picture this. You bring up something they said or did, something you remember crystal clear, and they just stare at you with a blank face and say, that never happened. Their denial is so absolute, so confident, that you actually start to wonder, wait, did I make that up? And that's the whole point. It's not about them just forgetting. It's about them actively rewriting history so they never have to be accountable. Another sneaky one is information withholding. Now, this isn't always an outright lie. It's much more subtle. It's about telling a partial truth. They just happen to leave out that one critical detail that would change your entire perspective. This forces you to make decisions in a fog based on a version of reality that they completely control. And oh, this next one, this one can be incredibly painful. It's called future faking. This is where they paint these beautiful, vivid pictures of a future with you, the vacations, the marriage, the shared dreams. It feels so real, so you invest, you sacrifice, all for a future that, strangely, never seems to get any closer. Those promises, they're just tools to keep you hooked right now. And finally, in this first category, we have overjustification. You ask a simple question, and what you get back is a tidal wave of information, a flood of names, times, places, and totally irrelevant details. The goal here isn't clarity. The goal is to exhaust you. You just give up because who has the energy to untangle that massive, confusing web? And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's not about being honest. It's about weaponizing information. It's about creating so much static and noise that you can no longer hear the truth. The whole point is to shut you down with an information overload. So, once they start messing with your perception of reality, what comes next? Well, that brings us to play number 2, which is all about controlling behavior. These tactics aren't just in your head. They're designed to directly manipulate your actions and keep you locked in a cycle where you're constantly trying to please them. A classic, and I mean classic, example is intermittent reinforcement. One day, they are the most loving, wonderful person on earth. The next, they're cold, distant, critical, and you have no idea why. You never know which version of them you're going to get, so you end up walking on eggshells, trying harder and harder to earn back the good version of them.
And this is what's so fascinating and, frankly, so powerful about this tactic. See, a consistent reward, that creates stability and security. But a random, unpredictable reward, that creates addiction. It is the exact same psychological principle that makes slot machines so incredibly compelling. It's not the actual payout that gets you hooked, it's the possibility of a payout on the very next track.
Ever felt like you just can't win no matter what you do? You might be dealing with someone who is constantly moving the goalposts. You do exactly what they asked, only to be told it wasn't quite right, or that now they need something else entirely. The target is designed to be impossible to hit, which, over time, just destroys your confidence. And here's what that looks like in the real world. The first request seems simple enough. But as soon as you meet it, a new condition pops up, and then another. See, the goal was never for you to actually succeed. The goal was to keep you trying, to keep you in a state of perpetually feeling like you failed. And the last one in this playbook is all about pressure. You know, that you have to decide right now feeling. This tactic manufactures a crisis to completely bypass your rational thinking. It hijacks your fear of missing out and forces you to make a snap judgment before you've had a second to really think it through and spot the red flags. So that brings us to our third and final play, eroding self-worth. And these tactics are, in a lot of ways, the most insidious because they are aimed squarely at your confidence, your identity, and your belief in your own value. And victim reversal is a masterclass in this. You bring up something they did that genuinely hurt your feelings, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one who's apologizing to them. They take your complaint, frame it as a vicious attack, and then they just crumble, forcing you to switch from needing comfort to giving it. And it follows this same predictable 4-step choreography every single time. You bring up a valid concern, they immediately reframe it so that they are the real victim. You get pulled into comforting them, and just like that, the original issue vanishes into thin air. Accountability? Totally impossible. Oh, and then there's the classic weaponized incompetence. You've probably seen this one. They agree to help with something, but they do it so badly that it's actually more work for you to fix their mess than it would have been to just do it yourself. Over time, they literally train you to stop asking for anything, leaving you to carry all the weight. And finally, we have moral licensing. Think of this like a get-out-of-jail-free card. They do one nice thing, maybe they buy you a gift or help out one time, and then they use that single act as a shield for weeks of awful behavior. And if you dare to complain, you're the one who's ungrateful. I mean, after all, remember that one nice thing they did? Okay, so after all of that, it sounds pretty bleak, right? So what on earth do you do? This brings us to the most important part, the antidote. And it's actually a lot simpler than you might think. The goal isn't to diagnose anybody or win some big argument. It's just about protecting your own perception. Now listen, if you take away only one thing from our entire time together, let it be this. The first step is not confrontation. It is simply recognition. Your greatest power comes from being able to quietly see what is happening, to move yourself from a place of confusion into a place of clarity. Just recognizing the play is half the battle. Because the moment you can silently name a tactic in your own head, oh, that's moving the goalposts, or, okay, this is victim reversal, it loses its invisible hold on you. The objective changes. You're no longer trying to win a fight. You are trying to protect your own peace and stay anchored in your own reality. It's about spotting the patterns over time, and above all, trusting that what you are seeing is real. That is where you take your power back. So that's the playbook. We've pulled back the curtain on the tactics, and we've talked about the antidote of awareness. And so the real question I want to leave you with is this. Now that you can see the playbook, what will you do differently to protect your clarity and your peace?
You ever get that really confusing, kind of sinking feeling in a relationship? That gut feeling where you just know something is off, but you can't for the life of you explain what it is?
Does that sound familiar? Where you're constantly second-guessing yourself, walking on eggshells, wondering what you did wrong this time? It's absolutely exhausting, and it can really make you start to question your own sanity.
But here's the thing. That feeling of constant chaos, it's not random. It is often a very specific, very recognizable pattern of behavior. No, you're not imagining it. You're just seeing tactics from a hidden playbook.
And by understanding this playbook, you can go from feeling totally lost and confused to a place of clarity. Really, just recognizing the plays is the very first step to getting your reality back.
So let's break down 5 of the most powerful and common tactics from this playbook. And I'm telling you, once you see them, you can't unsee them. Let's start with a really potent one. So this is when someone's affection is basically like a faulty light switch. 1 minute, it's on, it's bright, it's amazing. And the next, total darkness. One day they're all over you with love. The next day, it's just radio silence. You literally never know which version of them you're going to get.
This quote just nails the psychological trap here. You basically become an addict. You're not even hooked on the actual kindness anymore, but on the hope that you'll get it again. That hope keeps you scrambling, trying to crack the code to get that good version of them back.
Think about it. A slot machine is addictive for one reason. The payout is random. And that unpredictability creates a total obsession. You just keep pulling the lever thinking, okay, the next one will be the jackpot. Well, it's the exact same principle here, but instead of gambling with money, you're gambling with your heart.
All right, next up we have future faking. This is when someone paints this gorgeous, elaborate picture of a future with you, moving in together, getting married, that dream vacation, but they have absolutely zero intention of ever making it happen.
So here's how you spot it. The promises are always super vivid, right? They might even be looking at houses with you online. But the second you try to nail down an actual timeline, everything gets fuzzy. Next year suddenly becomes when things calm down, leaving you waiting and waiting for a tomorrow that never comes.
And this is why it is so insidious. Our brains hear these detailed stories and start treating them as if they're real. So you start making real-life sacrifices. Maybe you put up with bad behavior or turn down a job offer, all for a future that's completely made up. That promise? It's not a plan, it's a leash.
Okay, tactic number 3. You ever feel like you're in a race, but just as you get to the finish line, someone moves it another 100 feet away? That's what we call moving the goalposts.
This comparison really says it all. In a healthy situation, the expectations are clear. But with this tactic, the game is completely rigged. You finally get that promotion they said would make everything perfect, and suddenly they're worried about your student loan debt? The real goal was never for you to succeed. It's to keep you constantly struggling.
And the result of this? Your self-confidence gets completely shredded. When you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough, you start to think, maybe the problem is me. And that's exactly where they want you, off balance and much easier to control. Next up, one you've probably seen a million times, weaponized incompetence. This is basically just pretending to be bad at something to get out of doing your fair share.
And this is the cycle, right? First, they try to help, but it's a total disaster. Then, it's actually more work for you to fix what they did. So eventually you just give up and stop asking. And boom, just like that, they're free of that responsibility for good.
Our last tactic here is a real masterclass in emotional jujitsu. It's called victim reversal. This is that crazy-making situation where you bring up something that hurt your feelings, and somehow by the end of it, you're the one apologizing to them.
This quote is just devastatingly accurate. You come to them with a legitimate hurt, and they just fall apart. They start crying, or they accuse you of being mean, and suddenly you're the bad guy. Your original point is just gone.
And here's why it works so well. It weaponizes your own compassion against you. They use your natural instinct to comfort someone who's upset as a tool to completely silence you. It's a brilliant, if twisted, way to dodge all accountability.
So, we've gone through 5 different tactics, but they all share one single unifying goal. And that's it right there. Control. It doesn't matter if it's through hope or confusion or guilt. The ultimate goal of all these behaviors is to get and keep power over your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions.
See, this isn't just about winning an argument. It's about undermining your sense of self. It's about getting you to a place where you don't trust your own reality anymore. Because when you don't trust yourself, you become compliant. And that is the ultimate form of control.
So after all that, what's the antidote? What's the way out? Well, the first, and honestly the most powerful step, is just awareness.
And let's be really clear here. The point of knowing this stuff isn't so you can go around labeling other people, not at all. The real point is to validate your own feelings. It's to give you a framework so you can finally look at a situation and say, wait a minute, this feeling is real, this pattern is real, I am not crazy.
Because ultimately, knowledge really is power. When you recognize the playbook, it doesn't just clear up the confusion, it gives you permission to trust your gut again. And that leaves us with one final thought to reflect on. Now that you can see the playbook, how will you start to trust your own story?
You know, that feeling when you walk away from a conversation just feeling confused, maybe exhausted, or even a little bit crazy, but you can't quite put your finger on why? Well, today, we are pulling back the curtain and decoding those subtle, often invisible tactics of manipulation. Look, this isn't about pointing fingers. It's about getting clear. It's about arming yourself with knowledge. So let's get into it.
Right? It's that awful, sinking feeling deep in your gut. That sense that you're running on a treadmill, and just when you think you've found your pace, someone else cranks up the speed. No matter how hard you push, you're always, always one step behind. You do everything they ask. You climb that ladder. You reach for that star they pointed to. And just as your fingers are about to touch it, poof, the star is moved higher. That feeling of being perpetually off balance, I'm telling you, it is not in your head. And here is the absolute key. This isn't just happening by accident. It's not a mistake. It is a strategy. There is literally a playbook of tactics designed to keep you confused, to keep you compliant. And you know what? It's about time we learn the rules to their game.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the tactics that really mess with your head. These are the ones specifically designed to warp your sense of reality, to make you second-guess what you know to be true.
First up is a classic, moving the goalpost. Just picture it. You're told to hit a target. So you aim carefully, you fire, and just as that arrow is sailing perfectly toward the bullseye, the target gets yanked away. It's not a fair game. In fact, the game is rigged from the start.
And you have to see how this thing progresses. It starts out so reasonably, right? Just do this one thing. But over time, that constant shifting, that never-ending change, it just completely wears down your confidence. You start thinking, wow, maybe I'm the problem, when the truth is, the whole system was designed for you to fail.
And that's the brutal, honest truth of it.
The goal was never for you to actually win. The goal was to keep you trying, to keep you running, to keep you invested, and ultimately, to keep you under their control. So if moving the goalposts is all about keeping you busy in the present, our next tactic, future faking, is about controlling you with the promise of a finish line that, well, it doesn't even exist.
Oh, and they don't just promise a happy future, do they? No. They paint an absolute masterpiece. You can almost taste the wine in Tuscany. You can feel the warmth of the sun on that vacation they describe. It feels so real, so vivid, that you start building your entire life on a foundation of empty words.
And this is the life cycle, isn't it? It starts with that dazzling, exciting promise. Then comes your investment. You pour your heart and soul into it. But when it's time to deliver, there's a sudden delay. And finally, disappointment. You're just left there, waiting for a train that was never even scheduled to arrive.
So, we've seen how manipulators can distort reality. Now let's look at how they dodge it completely. These next couple of tactics, they're all about shifting the blame, about making you carry the weight of their actions.
Weaponized incompetence. The fine art of failing on purpose. You've seen this, I'm sure. They agree to help, but their help is so spectacularly bad that you just give up and say, fine, I'll do it myself. This isn't helplessness, people. It's a strategic retreat from responsibility.
It's like a 4-step dance. First, the agreement. Then, the epic fail. Next comes your growing frustration. And finally, the takeover. And just like that, they haven't just gotten out of one task. They've effectively trained you to never, ever ask them again. And let's be crystal clear, this has nothing to do with ability. It's about willingness. 'Cause funny, isn't it? How they're suddenly a certified genius when it comes to something they actually want to do.
All right, now for a tactic that will give you emotional whiplash, victim reversal. This is where the person who hurt you suddenly becomes the victim, and the whole conversation about their actions gets twisted into a therapy session for their feelings. So you take that deep breath, you've practiced what you're going to say, You calmly, maybe even lovingly, bring up something that genuinely hurt you, and you're just hoping for a little connection, an apology, any sign that they get it.
And then, boom, the tables turn in an instant. They crumble. Suddenly, they're the one who's been wounded. Your pain is completely forgotten, and the entire focus shifts to you comforting them, to you soothing the hurt that you supposedly caused just by speaking your truth.
And that's how the loop closes. You went in hoping for an apology, and you walk out giving one. Your needs just vanished into thin air, and you're left there wondering, how on earth did I become the bad guy in my own story? Okay, we have decoded the playbook. Now comes the most important part of all, using this knowledge, not as a weapon, but as a shield. Let's talk about how to actually recognize these patterns and protect your own peace of mind. Seriously, if there's one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. That feeling of constant confusion, it is not a sign that you're weak. It's the sound of your intuition screaming at you that something is wrong. It's your internal alarm system, and guess what? It's working perfectly. So how do you shield yourself? First, trust your perception. If something feels off, it is off, period. Second, watch what they do, not what they say. Actions always speak louder than empty promises. Third, look for the patterns, because this stuff is rarely a one-time thing. And maybe most importantly, remember, you are not responsible for how they react when you set a boundary. This knowledge isn't about diagnosing anyone, it's about protecting your own clarity. So the playbook is open, the patterns are now clear, and the power is back in your hands. The only real question left is, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to use this knowledge to reclaim your reality? You ever get that feeling where you're constantly second-guessing yourself, like the ground underneath you is always shifting in a relationship? Well, today we're going to demystify the often invisible tactics of psychological manipulation. We're going to break down the playbook. So let's just start by talking about that feeling, right? That profound sense of confusion that so many people feel when they're dealing with this stuff. It's like you're lost in a fog, and you don't even know how you got there. If this question hits home for you at all, it is so important to understand that these feelings, they are not random. You're not going crazy. They are very often the direct result of a specific, repeatable set of behaviors. A playbook, really, designed to keep you completely off balance. Okay, so let's pull back the curtain and actually look at some of the most common plays from that book. Because once you can name them, once you can see them coming, they start to lose their power. First up, intermittent reinforcement. This is that classic hot and cold behavior. You know what I'm talking about. 1 minute, they're showering you with love and affection, and the next, they're cold, distant, critical. And that unpredictability, that's the key. It creates this desperate hope for the good times to come back, keeping you hooked, constantly trying to win back their approval. And the psychology behind this is just fascinating. It is the exact same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. You know, that random, unpredictable payout from a slot machine? It creates an obsession. And in the same way, the possibility of getting that affection back becomes even more powerful than the affection itself. The whole relationship turns into a game of chance you just can't seem to walk away from. Okay, next we have something called future faking. This is when someone paints these incredibly vivid, beautiful pictures of a shared future. You know, the trips you're going to take, the house you'll buy, the amazing life you'll build together. The details feel so real you can almost touch them. And here's why it works so well. Our brains are literally wired to invest in a future we believe in. So you start making real-world sacrifices today for complete fantasy. But have you ever noticed that when you try to nail down the specifics, the timeline always shifts? Yeah, that's because these promises aren't plans, they're tools to keep you hooked while they get what they want right now. This brings us perfectly to the next tactic. Moving the goalposts. Man, this one is designed to make you feel like a failure. You think you know what the target is. You work so hard to hit it. And just as you're about to cross the finish line, surprise, the line moves. Suddenly, what you did isn't good enough, or it wasn't quite right. The whole point of this tactic is that the standards are designed to be impossible to reach. Here's another really common one that uses this fake helplessness. It's called weaponized incompetence. This is when someone deliberately does a task so poorly, knowing that you'll eventually just get frustrated and say, forget it, I'll do it myself. Over time, this trains you to lower your expectations to zero, And just like that, they're free of all responsibility while you get buried under it. Okay, now this one is incredibly disorienting. It's called victim reversal. You bring up something that genuinely hurt you, a totally legitimate issue, and before you even know what's happening, they are the one who's hurt. Your attempt to hold them accountable gets twisted into you attacking them. And this is so effective because it literally hijacks your natural empathy. You came into that conversation looking for an apology, but it ends with you giving one. It trains you to believe that your pain is actually a weapon that hurts them, so eventually you just learn to swallow it to keep the peace. So we've got unpredictable rewards, impossible standards, shifting realities. All these different tactics might seem disconnected, but they all serve one single unifying goal. It all boils down to one powerful objective. And here it is. The number one goal of all of this is simply control. It's about slowly eroding your confidence, your perception of reality, and your ability to make your own choices until you just can't trust your own judgment anymore. This is really the engine that drives the whole playbook. By keeping you in a constant state of confusion, or desperately chasing after hope, or drowning in guilt, a manipulator makes sure you're always off balance. And when you're off balance, you are so much easier to control. So, after all that, what's the key takeaway here? Look, this isn't about running around diagnosing everyone you meet. It's about something way more personal and powerful. It's about empowering yourself. Honestly, just being able to put a name to these behaviors is a revolutionary act. It validates that what you're feeling isn't crazy. No, it's a completely predictable response to a toxic pattern. Recognizing the playbook is the first real step toward reclaiming your own story and starting to trust your own experiences again. So, seeing the playbook, that's the first step. The real power comes from what you decide to do with that new knowledge. So the real question I want to leave you with is this. Now that you can see the plays, how will you begin to trust your own story again?
You ever been in a relationship, at work, with family, or even a partner, and you just feel confused all the time? Kind of like you're trying to play a game, but nobody ever told you the rules? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that exact feeling.
I mean, just think about that feeling for a second. That walking on eggshells sensation, where something that got you praise yesterday gets you a cold shoulder today. You're just left scrambling, thinking, wait, what did I do wrong? It's completely exhausting and so disorienting.
And here's the thing you absolutely have to get. That fog of confusion, it isn't random. It's the direct result of a very specific set of behaviors. This isn't some big, unsolvable mystery. It is, quite literally, a playbook.
Okay, so let's dive into what that means. The only way to get your footing back, to find solid ground again, is to start recognizing these patterns for what they are, deliberate tactics. Once you can actually put a name to them, you start to drain them of their power. You start moving from confusion to clarity.
So let's unpack 5 of the most common and, frankly, most powerful tactics from this hidden playbook. We're going to look at what they are, sure, but more importantly, why they are so dang effective at keeping you off balance and constantly second-guessing yourself.
All right, first up, we've got something called intermittent reinforcement. This is the emotional whiplash you feel when someone switches from being warm and loving to cold and distant with, zero warning. One day they can't get enough of you. The next day, you're lucky if you get a text back. The only thing that's consistent is the inconsistency.
And this quote right here, it just nails the psychological trap. You get so fixated on getting back to those good times that the hope of their kindness becomes even more powerful than the kindness itself. You're just left constantly chasing a high they only decide to give you every once in a while.
The psychology behind this is fascinating, really, because it works on the exact same principle as a gambling addiction. A slot machine is addictive, not because it pays out every single time, but because it pays out randomly. That unpredictability is what keeps you sitting there, pulling the lever, thinking, maybe this time. It basically turns a human connection into a game of chance that feels impossible to walk away from.
Now, building on all that uncertainty is our next tactic, future faking. This is when someone paints this breathtaking, vivid picture of your future together. They'll talk about the house you're going to buy, the amazing trips you'll take, the life you'll build. The only problem is that someday they're talking about, it never actually gets here.
And you can totally spot the signs. The descriptions of the future are always super detailed, but the second you ask for a concrete plan, things suddenly get really hazy. Timelines shift, something always comes up, and you're the one left waiting, holding on to this beautiful fantasy that they engineered just to keep you hooked.
And this is so devastatingly effective because our brains are basically wired to emotionally invest in detailed stories. You start making real sacrifices in your actual life, passing up on jobs, tolerating bad behavior, all for a future that only exists in their words. That promise isn't about the future, it's a tool to control you right now.
Okay, next up is the impossible-to-win game of moving the goalposts. This is where no matter what you do, it's just never quite right. You could follow their instructions to the letter, only to be told that's not what they really wanted, or that you should have known to do something totally different. The finish line is always 10 steps further away. I mean, think about it. In any healthy relationship or situation, the expectations are clear, they're consistent, success is actually possible. But with this tactic, the target is designed to be unreachable. The point isn't for you to succeed. The point is to make you feel like you're always failing.
And over time, this just systematically grinds down your self-confidence. When you can never, ever get it right, you stop questioning the impossible game and you start questioning yourself. You start to believe that you are the problem, that you're the one who's incompetent. And that, right there, is exactly the intended result.
And speaking of incompetence, let's look at when it's used as a weapon. This one is called weaponized incompetence. And it's basically the act of deliberately doing a task so poorly that you'll just get frustrated and do it yourself. It's this strategy of manufactured helplessness that's all about shedding responsibility. You see this little cycle play out all the time. They help, but whoops, the forms are filled out all wrong, or half the groceries are forgotten, or the task is just half done. It just creates more work for you to fix it. So what happens? Eventually, you just stop asking. You've been subtly trained to expect nothing from them, and just like that, they've successfully escaped any real effort. Now, our final tactic is maybe the most disorienting one of all, victim reversal. This is that masterful flip where you go to them with a genuine hurt you've experienced, and somehow by the end of the conversation, they're the victim, and you actually find yourself apologizing to them.
And this quote just says everything. The conversation that started with your pain ends with you comforting them. You try to bring up a real issue, a broken promise, a cruel comment, and instead of taking any responsibility, they just fall apart. They tell you how much your words are hurting them, how you're being so unfair, and poof, the entire conversation is derailed. Your original point is just gone.
So the key thing to understand here is that this tactic works by weaponizing your own decency against you. Most of us, when we see someone in distress, our instinct is to help, to comfort them. A manipulator is counting on that. They use your empathy like a shield to deflect all responsibility and ultimately to silence you.
So we've looked at 5 really different tactics here. Unpredictable rewards, fake promises, impossible standards. But what's the thread that ties all of this stuff together? What's the ultimate goal?
It all boils down to this one single word, control. These aren't just isolated bad habits or, poor communication skills. They are strategies, whether they're conscious of it or not, that are all designed to do one thing: establish and maintain power and control over you.
The end game is to systematically dismantle your sense of self, to erode your confidence, to confuse your perception of reality, to make you question your own judgment until you're so off balance and so uncertain that you become way easier to manage. It's about making you feel lost so they can be your guide.
And that brings us to what is honestly the most important part of this whole explainer. Because understanding these tactics isn't about winning an argument or collecting a list of grievances. It's about taking the first step towards something way more powerful.
Look, the real point here isn't to give you labels to throw at other people. It's to give you a framework to validate your own gut feelings. If you've ever felt confused or anxious or like you're going crazy, this is why. Your feelings aren't the problem. They are a perfectly rational response to a deeply irrational situation.
So let's end with this thought. Recognizing these patterns isn't just about spotting what a manipulator might do next. It's really about giving yourself permission to finally, fully believe your own side of the story. Now that you can see the playbook, the most empowering question you can ask yourself is the one right here. How will you trust your own story?
All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we're going to decode some of the most common and, let's be honest, super confusing tactics of manipulation. The whole point here is to bring some clarity to that chaos, by actually giving these things a name.
You know that feeling, right? Where you just feel constantly off balance in a conversation or maybe even in a whole relationship? It's like you're always a step behind, just reacting to moves you can't even see. Well, let me tell you, that's not an accident. That feeling, that's the whole point.
Yeah, because what feels so random and confusing to us, well, it's actually anything but. There's a pattern to it. There's a set of really predictable moves. You could almost call it a playbook. And that's exactly what we're going to do. See, manipulation absolutely thrives in confusion. So the single most powerful thing you can do is just name what's happening. So let's open up this rulebook, shall we?
Okay, first up, we're going to look at tactics that are designed to completely mess with your perception of reality. I'm talking about the plays that literally make you question your own mind and your own memories.
First on the list is something called selective memory. This is when someone just confidently denies something that you know happened. Like an argument or a promise they made or some hurtful thing they said. They'll just insist, nope, that never happened. Or they'll tell a totally different version of the story where, surprise, surprise, they come out looking great.
And this is where it gets really tricky. They'll push their version of events with so much confidence, so much conviction, that you can't help but start to second-guess yourself. You start thinking, wait, maybe I am remembering it wrong. And if that happens enough, it just completely erodes your trust in your own perception.
All right, next up, information withholding. This one's subtle because it's not, a flat-out lie. It's about what they don't say. They just conveniently leave out the most important details. The kind of details that would totally change your mind if you knew them. It's all about keeping you in a fog that they control.
Okay, then you've got overjustification. You know this one. You ask a simple question, right? And what you get back is this 10-minute monologue. It's filled with all these random details and confusing side stories, and by the end of it, you've completely forgotten what you even asked in the first place. The goal here isn't to make things clear. It's to just exhaust you with a wall of words until you give up.
And the last one in this group is a big one. Future faking. Oh man. This is where they paint these incredible, vivid pictures of your future together. They talk about the trips you'll take, the goals you'll achieve, this amazing life. And it feels like hope, right? It gets you invested. So invested that you start tolerating really bad behavior right now, all for a future that, honestly, is never going to happen. And this just hits the nail on the head. Those promises, they're not actual plans. They're just tools. Tools to keep you quiet, to keep you hoping, to keep you making sacrifices for a dream that was only ever just talk.
So all of those tactics were about messing with your sense of reality. Now, let's shift gears and look at the ones that are more about directly controlling what you do and how you feel. These are the plays that, pull the strings.
And this one is incredibly powerful. It's called intermittent reinforcement. So one day they're just the best, warm, loving, totally focused on you. And the next, they're cold, they're distant. You literally never know which version of them you're going to get. And that unpredictability, wow, it's so addictive. You find yourself constantly scrambling, just trying to get back to those good times.
This is seriously the perfect way to think about it. It's like you're playing a slot machine. You just keep pulling that lever again and again, hoping for that little payout of affection. And here's the crazy part. It's the fact that the reward is so random and unpredictable that creates the obsession. It's what keeps you hooked way more than just consistent kindness ever would. All right, next we have moving the goalposts. You know this game. You work so hard to do exactly what they asked for. You finally do it, and then they tell you that's not what they wanted, or the standards have changed. The target is always shifting. See, the goal isn't for you to actually succeed. The goal is to keep you constantly trying and constantly feeling like you're just never good enough.
And then there's false urgency. You'll hear things like, you have to decide right now, or this is a one-time offer. What this does is it manufactures a crisis. It's designed to hijack your brain's fear response, right? So you stop thinking rationally. It pressures you to just agree to something, anything, before you've had a second to actually think it through and spot all the red flags.
Okay, on to our last category. And this set of tactics is all about one thing, and one thing only: avoiding responsibility. These are the classic moves for dodging blame no matter what.
First up is a classic, weaponized incompetence.
Now, let's be clear, this is not about someone who's genuinely trying and failing. No. This is when someone deliberately does a task badly again and again until you get so frustrated you just go, fine, I'll do it myself. And just like that, it's a brilliant strategy to shift all the work and responsibility right onto your shoulders.
And that's the long game, isn't it? Slowly but surely, you just end up taking on more and more work because it's just easier than fighting about it. It's like they've basically trained you to expect absolutely nothing from them.
Next is victim reversal. And oh boy, this is like a masterclass in emotional jujitsu. So you try to bring up something that hurt your feelings, right? A legitimate issue. And somehow, before you can even finish your sentence, they are the one who's hurt. They flip it so it sounds like you've attacked them, and all of a sudden, you're the one apologizing. It's wild.
And it follows this super predictable pattern. You can see it here. You start by saying, hey, this hurt me. Then they perform some kind of big distress or anger. Suddenly, the whole focus shifts to their feelings. And how does it end? With you comforting them. Your original point is just gone. It is an incredibly effective way to shut down any conversation about accountability.
Last but not least, we've got moral licensing. This is when someone acts like doing one nice thing gives them a get-out-of-jail-free card for all their bad behavior. You know, they'll bring up that one time they helped you out to totally deflect from the 10 times they didn't. It's like they think kindness is some kind of bank account where they can make a deposit and then just withdraw it later by being awful. That's not how it works.
So we've gone through a lot of these different plays. What's the big takeaway here? What's the big picture? It's really about recognizing that these things aren't just random, isolated incidents. They're tactics. They are moves in a game.
And when you start to connect the dots, it becomes so clear. You can see the tactic, what their goal is, and this is the most important part, how it's designed to make you feel, right? Future faking is meant to make you feel hopeful, but also stuck. Victim reversal is designed to leave you feeling confused and guilty. When you see it all laid out like this, the pattern becomes pretty undeniable.
Look, just by giving these confusing behaviors a name, you start to take away their power. It's like you can't unsee the playbook once you know it's there. So the real question isn't just about what they're doing anymore, it's about what you do next. Now that you can see the moves being made, what's your next move going to be?
Reclaim your first-hand reality by anchoring your memory to the words spoken, the tone felt, and the emotions stirred, and refuse to let another's confident denial rewrite your experience. Recognize that when goals move or standards shift, the real issue is the system, not your competence, so you can separate your effort from a broken setup. Value clarity by trusting that honest people give direct, straightforward answers, and use your awareness of weaponized transparency as a signal to seek crisp explanations. Observe when someone is capable only when it serves them, and recognize weaponized incompetence as a deliberate training tool aimed at your doubt. Set firm boundaries against victim reversal by validating your own hurt, refusing to shift into a comfortable role, keeping the focus on the original issue until accountability is restored.